Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the channel, Scientology, Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm here with my co-host, Janis Gillham Grady. How are you doing today, Janis?
Good, Mark. Good day, everybody. And today is a day that I would wish I was sitting outside. It is so nice out there.
Yeah, it is.
But as soon as this is over, I'm going out.
That's great. Well, anyway, we want to welcome everybody back to our channel. And if you would, please subscribe if you like our stuff and all that. But we're starting our second year, and this is our first interview of the second year of this channel. And Janis, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest?
Yes, this will be our third interview with my friend Stu Moreau, who was on the Apollo with me. And let's bring Stu on.
Hi, Stu. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
We're doing good. Like you said, it's beautiful. How is it in Florida where you're at?
I was just about to make the same comment. You know, it's beautiful out today, and you know, summer's coming already, so it's nice.
Yeah.
Good.
So how do you do, Stu?
I do good. How are you? Yeah. Okay.
That's good. Stu, now we understand you wanted to. Last time we talked to you, we told the story about the
mutiny,
mutiny on the Apollo, and there were a couple of details that you wanted to,
Yeah,
mention.
I didn't really
go ahead and start with that.
I didn't really cover how dramatic that was, I suppose, because I don't know, all those things, they're been so long ago, and it's like it doesn't seem like that big a deal to me, but I guess to other people it's kind of a big deal. But
mutinies didn't happen every day.
Yeah, it was. Well, at the time, it was pretty serious, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because in Rudy, an interesting thing about Rudy, and I didn't describe him very well. Again, he was a big guy. He wasn't probably that tall. He was probably a little tall. He meant 5'10" or 5'11", but he was very large. You know, he was like big and round and strong as an ox, and he was all, he'd been.
You wanted to give his last name, right? What was his name?
Yeah, his name was Rudy Savage, which is kind of a poetic tie-in to the whole thing. He was not a guy to be messed with, but he was you guys used to play with him and stuff.
Yeah,
and I would run up behind him and jump on his back, and he would just barely sway, like that. He was such a big guy, and because we were very physical, doing all that karate and training and stuff like that. We used to do with the martial arts stuff. We had him and Ron Loving and Andre, and these guys were all like good at that kind of stuff. And us young guys wanted to learn that stuff,
Yeah, but Rudy was like a big teddy bear.
Yeah, everybody liked him and stuff. But I was thinking part of the thing, because that was still the 60s, and there was a lot of racial stuff going on then, and still, it was still in the air a lot. And I didn't think about it much because of my background growing up in San Francisco and stuff. But Captain Bill was the captain, and he had asked me. And I didn't know. He said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "San Francisco." And he said, "Oh, you'll probably be okay," because he was going to assign Rudy to me. And I suppose some people might have had attitudes about that, even though most of us did not, like you guys growing up and stuff. But Norman probably did. And part of the thing that instigated it was probably, it's Captain Bill. He was pretty cool. Part of the thing was that I think he got in Rudy's face, and he said he was being lazy or something like that. It was 50 years ago.
But it was Captain Norman Starkey who did that.
What did I just say? Didn't I say Norman?
Captain Bill.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, the picture, I had Captain Bill's picture up there, but here's Norman right here.
No, Norman came. No, Captain Bill was cool about the whole thing. He was the one who was on when Rudy was first assigned. Captain Bill went off on a mission to Europe. There was just a bunch of little tiny orgs in Europe at that time. And he went off and did a mission to expand Europe. And then, I don't know, within a year, the whole European continent was really booming, and it was competing with the big orgs in the U.S. He had done a really good mission and came back to the ship and then described the whole thing to us. And he was a really good storyteller and told the whole thing about. Anyway, I won't get into details of it, but it was he was pretty good. But so when I first got on the ship, Bill was the captain. And then sometime in there, and also when I was on as first mate, and then Norman became the captain somewhere. Took over Norman Starkey. I took over from Bill, and in between there, I think on a cruise we actually hired a a public guy who was a captain. You remember that? We had that guy on board for a while.
Yeah, he was Swedish or Norwegian.
I think he was Dutch.
Well, he came aboard. He was sailing around the world with his family, and we met him in Safi.
Is that what that was?
Yeah, and we hired them with him to be like our navigator.
I thought he was hired to be the captain for the because we needed. I don't know. Anyway, so you know more about that than I did. But I remember doing one trip with him as the captain, and I was a watch guy, and I asked him something about the stars and this and that. You know, I didn't know much about navigation and stuff at that time. Although I did learn celestial navigation on board, and
I remember them because their son was like 15 years old and I was probably 13, and I was like in awe of him.
Was he a blondie?
Yes.
Big, tall Swedish guy. Huh? Anyway, all right. So anyway, Rudy was that whole thing it happened really fast. Norman came down and got in his face, and nobody was close to him. All this about, I mean, it just happened, and Rudy got him down on the deck real quick, and I tried to bring his fist back and was about to punch him, and I just yelled, "Rudy, don't hit him," because it would have hurt Norman really bad if he would have, because he had him pinned down and he was sitting there, and he didn't hit him, so that was good. But so we all got, we got broke up, and I'm sure the deck crew was sort of milling around a little bit, going, "Oh God, what happened here?" or something like that. And I think the messengers were reporting, "Oh, the guys are standing around," and, or something like that. And so that's how the ComEv whole thing. Well, it was going to be a ComEv anyway, and I don't even know who started the ComEv. Do you? Was it?
I don't remember.
It was probably H.
Well, no, Hubbard ordered the ComEv.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, to get to investigate it and find out what exactly happened. And so everyone involved who was basically on deck at the time, watching it or trying to stop it, every name went down.
Yeah, well,
and the ComEv was to decide who went and didn't go, or what the punishments were.
Was he pretty pissed about it at that time? Was he upset about it, LRH?
I don't remember him being upset about it, but he was concerned. But not upset, but concerned is more of the word.
I'm sure Norman was pretty rattled about the whole thing. How the budgets have been pounded.
Oh, yeah, this big guy on top of you, nailing you down.
Yeah, he saw Norman. Back then, he was kind of thin, I guess. He got a little bigger when he got older. But
whatever happened to Rudy Savage and the other people?
So anyway, I'm sure we were probably put on some kind of watch. I don't remember the details. It was 50 years ago or something like that, more than 50, I think. And but the ComEv all went really quickly, and then we were, the three of us, me and I was going to say some more details about. There was nobody close to Rudy when it happened. There was a few guys probably working on the deck in that area, some deck guys, and we kind of all milled around and tried to, after it happened, and, we got together. And it might have looked like there was a kind of mutiny going on if the messengers reported up that we were, talking about it or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, so, yeah, we all got ComEv'd, and then several of the younger guys or the other people just got assigned conditions, I think. But and Carl Rosencrantz was the chairman of the ComEv. I think I mentioned that last time. He was pretty strict, and he was a German engineer. He actually was an engineer from Germany who had escaped long before the wall came down. They used to allow, he told me that they used to allow specialized engineers to come across, and people like that to come across the border once in a while. And he just stayed over one day, and then he immigrated to Australia. And then he joined Scientology from there. But he got pretty upset with the whole thing around the same time I did in the early 80s, and just left. And we actually hooked up together in Alaska. He went to Alaska and moved to Seward. And if there was anybody who was a natural-born Alaskan, it was Carl Rosencrantz. Okay, so Carl was the chairman of that ComEv, and he was pretty strict. And we didn't have any prayer then. It was like, we got offloaded, and then I wrote the DR. I told that in the last story, but just the details about us milling around and nobody really being involved in any kind of mutiny or anything thinking like that. Nobody was involved in that. But but Dilts and Rudy were ready to go. They'd had enough, and but not me. I was pretty gung ho still back then.
Yeah.
But being appointed MAA, that was a big deal. You know, LRH had many years of the importance of ethics and all those papers that have been written. And I'm not sure, I didn't go over this before, did I? About, there's volumes and volumes of great books written about ethics by very, intellectually superior people over the years. And it's a very important subject, and in Scientology it's important too. So him appointing me as MAA, I guess later I figured it was a big deal. At the time, it was just a job, and I took it seriously. But let's go to a couple of interactions with the LRH. So the first one was when I was Bosun and the ship was all rusty. Now that one shot you had of the ship with the rust down the side, and that was the side of the ship. It looked pretty. It was worse than that. And I just got out there and I painted it up, and he wrote a commendation for me. That was an interaction. He appreciated that somebody just did something without even him having to order it. And then I started to tell you the first kind of interaction I had with him was when I was first mate, and I was I was showing Steve Nichols, that guy we mentioned. Now Steve was a big kind of guy, and he had a lot of ship experience. He'd worked on merchant ships, and he was a good deckhand and stuff. But I was showing him around, and he sort of walked pretty slow, and I was I moved everywhere real fast. So he was walking real slow, and right in front of the window for the research room, which were always open because, I said, hurry up, man, or something like that. Huh?
The research room was Hubbard's office.
Right. It was the prom deck lounge,
it was originally the smoking lounge, and it became L.Ron Hubbard's office. And it had these big windows, not like portholes, but actual windows that opened up. And we would open those up to get the air going through, and you could hear people out on deck. And so that's where Stu was, right outside that window. Yeah.
And I said, hurry up or get moving or something like that. And so it was probably some kind of subconscious thing going on where I wanted to just make noise or something. But anyway, I had sort of bugged him a little bit. He was in there doing some work. So he sent a messenger, what was that all about? And I said, he said, why did you say that? And I said, well, because he was going slow. That was the end of it. I didn't get any more interactions on that. But that was one of my first interactions with him. Steve was a really good guy. You know him from, And then a similar thing happened when I was doing a project. The B deck boarding doors were the next level up. And they weren't operational when I got on the ship. They were all like rusted shut and stuff like that. But normally when you go on a ship, you take a gangplank to a nice area, from the dock. And that's, if you show that ship, or one of the boats, I can show the ships, I can show where the B deck boarding door was. See up there where it says B and that square right next to it? That was where the B deck boarding door was. And normally if you have a gangplank and you have real passengers coming on board, they would go in that one because it goes into a real nice, that was B deck foyer, which was a nice foyer right next to the dining room and downstairs.
Yeah.
Hubbard's
no, it's the officer's dining room, or it used to be the A-class passenger dining room on B deck.
What was A deck? Mostly cabins and stuff?
A deck, there was the A deck lounge, which was Hubbard's dining room. And
that was in the back there.
The port side was Hubbard and Mary Sue's stateroom.
Okay.
Rooms and cabins for the household unit. Yeah. And then on the starboard side of A deck were the aides cabins.
That's right, yeah.
And the Hubbard children were all in the A deck forward, in the forward part of it.
That would have been all high-class passenger cabins up in that area, including the suites that Hubbard had. He had the suite all the way in the front port side.
Yeah, right? He had the stateroom, which was the equivalent of 4 cabins.
Yeah. And then right above that prom deck where
on this photo, can't you see it? Like the windows, is it on that? See where it says A? Or is it right up front of that?
It's just a little after that. 1, 2, 3. Probably the third window back from that A would have been his stateroom, and then the next set of 3 would have been Mary Sue's.
Yeah, and you guys, the messengers had cabins on that side too, I think.
No, the household unit did. Messengers, we were on B deck forward.
Oh, okay, yeah. Anyway, so I was doing the project down there, was first mate still, and I was staying up late because you know me, I just wanted to get stuff done. And Peter Warren wanted to use that door for some kind of things, you know, like having to do with port relations. And so it was my target to fix those doors up. So I just worked my butt off on them. And that's where the chip and hammer stuff came in, because there was so much rust and stuff on there. So I was working late and beating on them doors. And he sent a messenger down, what's all the noise? And I said, well, I'm working on the doors. And I didn't get any response on that. So I think he appreciated that people were doing their jobs, even though they were making noise.
Right.
But he did, you know, he wanted to know what was going on. And then
well, we used to have all those. The port captain's office used to have big parties for VIPs in the dining room, and so having you do that and the gangway going straight up there made it easier than bringing them aboard through the well deck and then up and then dip back down.
It was a much more classy way to enter a ship than, you know, the poor people entered in the back there.
Well, where would the staff enter? Would it be back there in the aft well deck, or
the gangplank was usually hooked up to the aft well deck, if I'm not mistaken.
Got it.
Right?
Where it says aft well deck in the back.
That's where I came on board. We always had a guard there. We call them quartermaster of the watch. And you'd stand there and that was your watch post. Everybody had a regular job and a watch post on the ship. And we would rotate. And, you know, in my early days, I was a quartermaster. Then I worked up to officer of the day, and like in charge of the whole watch, you know, like the senior officer and stuff like that, in charge of the whole ship stuff. Whatever was going on went through the officer of the day on the watch.
Now was the promenade deck there right where you see the lifeboats? It almost looks like it's a balcony running the whole length of the ship.
It is. That's usual on a ship. They have a prom deck where you can walk around up at that level.
Okay. And Hubbard's office was up there on that prom deck level?
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Yes. Right around the middle of where it says prom deck.
Got it.
Yeah. And we also, I was just going to go back to the boarding. We always docked mostly on the starboard side because Hubbard's cabin was on the port side. So he wouldn't get all the dock noise if we docked on the starboard side.
Well, and just so our viewers know, the starboard side is the back side of this photo. The side that we're looking at is the port side.
Yeah.
Yes. The port side is the left and the starboard side is the right.
Yeah.
And you guys always used to rope off the port prom deck so nobody could walk over there, because he was on a night schedule. Hubbard always worked till like 4 a.m., I think.
Yeah.
And then he would get up at noon. So that was the schedule. So it was always roped off till noon over that side. So we didn't.
Yeah, because you could hear people walking above, so we'd rope it off, and then the radio room was right above his cabin.
Yeah.
And so if the radio operator had to go to the radio room, or like Bob Pryor lived in the radio room, he'd have to be very quiet, tiptoeing around to not have messengers coming and telling him off.
You know, this thing about one of the big things in the Sea Org that's very precious is sleep time. And on my libs, I often used to just want to sleep in a little bit, Liberty day off, right? And one day I decided to camp out for my libs, I camped out in one of the boats right above the B deck, the A deck on the port side there. And I figured nobody would be bugging me because it was on LRH's side. But just my luck, how much bad luck I had with sleeping. Right on top of the stack, there's a little tiny vent for the water tanks, because they would slosh around and the air would have to come in and out, right? So they were filling up the water tank, and I was sleeping. It was probably 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning, or maybe even earlier. I don't know. I was sleeping away in a sleeping bag up there. And just my luck, right at the top of that stack, there's a little vent, and they had overfilled the water tanks. It came up and came out that vent. And with all the places for that water to land, it hit me right in the face and woke me up. Anyway.
Now, was there a deck? Was there a deck up there where the smokestack is?
It's called a boat, where it says boat deck.
Okay.
That's actually where I think you were supposed to board the boats.
The lifeboats.
And then they would lower down and go over the side.
Got it.
Well, let me bring something up on that. where it says boat deck, that's level with the sun deck, which was our most top deck.
Well, that's the same thing. The boat deck and the sun deck are the same, right? Yeah.
Right, and we had a bridge there because the ship could go both directions. We had a rudder in the front and the back of the ship, and so we had a second bridge so the ship didn't have to turn around in small rivers when it was a cattle boat. But up there on the promenade deck, in front of every lifeboat, they would be lowered down to the level of the promenade deck, and doors would open to each boat. So people could, if the ship is sinking, people would jump into their lifeboat and go all the way down in the lifeboat and then unhook and off they go.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you another question.
Right. I had the wrong thing.
The front of the, where the bridge, I'm telling you because you guys know exactly where the bridge is. It looks like the prom deck runs into an interior front forward facing level, and then above that, is that the bridge above that, or is the bridge below that?
No, the bridge was on top there, right, Jan? And then it had little wings on either side for when you're going to dock and stuff, so you can see.
I got it.
Yeah, the bridge wings.
Yes. What was below the bridge?
I think it was just an observation area, wasn't it?
It was. Well, you could look out through the windows and not get blown away.
Yeah, passengers could stand there.
Yeah, passengers would stand there on the promenade deck as the ship's sailing into the wind.
I see. Yeah.
It was just a protective area, and the bridge was above, and then you had the flying bridge above that.
Okay, now let me ask you a question on the promenade deck. Could you walk from the back of the boat on the promenade deck and then around that front part and then down the other side of the promenade deck?
You could do a full circle around that deck.
Okay. So you could walk completely around up there.
Yeah.
That's like on the ship we were on. That's where they would have the thing like the shuffleboard court and stuff like that. When we went on that cruise recently, it's just a place where people can walk and hang out. When you're on a cruise, you do that kind of stuff,
And that's where the deck chairs are put there, and people lay there in the sun. Or even better yet, for full sun, you go to the sun deck.
Yeah. And then what on the stern or poop deck back there? It looks like there's an upper level there. What was in there? What was in that part of the boat?
That was mainly used for when you're doing docking. You have a lot of ropes and stuff you're dealing with, and the anchor. There's a big thing called a windlass there, and it's a winch, kind of a big electric winch for when the anchor drops. You just unhook it and let it go, kind of thing. But for bringing it back up, you had to hook in the winch and bring it up, and then also the ropes when you pulling in the ship into dock. You put a big rope on the bollard or bit or whatever it's called on the dock, and then you'd put it around the windlass, and it would, it's an electric thing, and that would haul the ship in, and then you tie it up on the deck there. But all that gear was there on the aft and on the front. There was another. I was always in charge of the or work the front end of the ship, which was usually the first one where you throw a little heaving line over, and they. Larry Frazier put one through the port captain's the shore port captain's window one time.
Really?
Yeah, little small.
I was going to ask, did you ever have any difficulties docking the ship? I watch below deck, which are these super yachts, and the deck crew are trying, with the winds blowing and the this and the that, and they got fenders, and there's other boats and all that. Did you guys have any crazy experiences docking the boat?
Docking and undocking was always we had, like I said, we had the watch stations, which was like we were doing ship duties, and we had regular duties on the ship. The watch stations, like for docking stations, my station was on that front, on the forecastle, forecastle. And we had a couple of pretty hairy times. That good, the polypropylene one. It was the only good one we had. And they would stretch to about twice their length before they would break. And something happened when they were docking, and it started pulling away, and that rope was just stretching and stretching. And we temporarily tied them with a little tether line, but there was no way I can get that out. So I used to carry that K-bar around with me, and I would just whip that thing out and cut that line, and that released the ship, because it was a kind of a disaster. My normal uniform on the ship was, I think, shorts and a T-shirt and work boots. And I always carried that K-bar around with me, that big old knife, because that was just part of the deck gear. You needed to have a knife kind of thing. And I like that marine K-bar.
You know, Stu, talking about docking station problems, I think it happened before you arrived because we were in Melilla, and I've told this story in a couple of videos before talking about ship days, but I was the forward speaker on the walkie-talkie communicating to the bridge. That was my docking station job. And John Axel was there as a linesman, handling the lines. And we sailed into Melilla, and you talk about the monkey fist, which is a fist of rope so that you can throw it. And anyway, John's standing there and he throws the monkey fist, and someone on the dock is supposed to retrieve it and then pull the ship's line down. Well, it missed and it went into the water and it wasn't attached to the line. And so John Axel dives over the side in the middle of docking, and Hubbard's up on the bridge yelling and screaming and swearing as to why is this person diving off the forecastle? And I'm on the walkie-talkie trying to explain to him how the monkey line wasn't attached to the line, and John dove in after it. Oh, it's just, and then we went to Greece and we were there for like 9 months and so forth. And then when we came back to Melilla about a year later, I happened to be with Hubbard, and the pilot comes aboard, and we go down to meet the pilot and walk him up the prom deck to the bridge. And the pilot reminds the Commodore of one of our crew members diving over the side, and I remembered it quite clearly. And he pulls out John's glasses. And he said, we were down at the dock. We had some divers down there to fix some things on the dock, and they found John's glasses.
Wow. John Axel was famous for his thick black glasses. Now, so did the Commodore go, oh, thank you very much? Or what?
Really he did. And then I could see he didn't remember. And I reminded him of when we sailed into Melilla before, how John dived over. And then you could see he remembered the story. Yeah. And then for weeks he had John's his glasses sitting on his desk.
Now there's a gung-ho Sea Org member. I'm after this.
Well, I was going to say, diving off that forecastle, that looks like it's about a 30-foot down to the water line, isn't it?
It's not really that high. People exaggerate about that. The well deck was probably about 10 or 12 feet.
Well, was he on the well deck or on the forecastle?
No, he was on the forecastle.
Oh, he was? Yeah, that's a pretty good jump off of that. That's a pretty good dive off of that.
Think about it. That's a 3-story building. I mean, that's high. I
don't think it was 30, but I wouldn't have jumped off of that. I didn't like high dives.
I'm just counting the decks. If you go C, B, A, he's up there almost at A deck height. And it's, that's a good, I'd be scared.
Well, not quite. It's just like the shape of the ship.
All right, we'll be back to the show in a minute, but I wanted to talk to you all about a product that Janis has from her company, Outback Naturals, and it's called Koala Calm. Janis, what is it? Tell people about this product.
This is a product that my father developed. Must have been back in the late 80s. He came up with this. He always sold CalMag, calcium magnesium, which was a big seller. But his wife at that time had PMS issues, and so he started researching more and digging in, and he actually found she didn't need the calcium part, but what she needed was the magnesium part, because that helped break down the calcium and the body assimilate the calcium better rather than getting calcium deposits and kidney stones and that type of thing. So the magnesium helped dissolve that and help the body through by not having the calcium added with it.
Right. And it's really good for like people with anxiety or stress or having trouble sleeping. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I take it actually every night. I take it with 250 milligrams of B1, and I sleep very well, actually.
That's great. Now, how do people, if they get it, it comes in a powder form, right? So how do they actually, drink it or take it? What do they do?
Yeah. Well, you heat up hot water. I don't microwave. I just have a kettle and I heat up the hot water and I fill up half a cup of hot water, and then I add the amount of magnesium powder that I need. If I put the powder in first and then pour in the hot water, it fizzes and spills all over and makes a mess. So I do the hot water first. I add the magnesium. I don't put the spoon in because, again, it's going to fizz all over the place. So I just let it then fizzle down on its own and do its own thing. And then I add water, cold water, or some ice to cool it down. And then I just take it with my B1.
Okay, and it comes in 2 flavors, right?
Yeah, I have apple cinnamon.
Okay.
And also unflavored plain. And some people like to add this to their orange juice and different things like that, or even their tea.
Yeah, I've used it in the evening too. If I need to, having trouble go to sleep, I'll heat up some water, put some of the Koala Calm in it, and then I'll just sip it while I'm watching TV or reading or whatever before I go to bed. And next thing you know, I go right to sleep. So if you're having problems with anxiety or stress, or if you're having trouble sleeping, it's really great for us. And of course, we're not getting any younger, any of us. So anyway, we recommend the Koala Calm. Now, I want to tell people how they can get it. You can actually order right now today at our store. Just go down to the tab down below, click on it, and you can find the Koala Calm there. It's $19.99 plus shipping and handling in the United States. And you can just order it there. But Janis, in the non-US, how can people order the Koala Calm?
They can just go to Amazon.com and order it there because they have international shipping and so forth. But Mark, there's also something else I wanted to comment on. My dad would always tell me that he would take magnesium sometimes if he's feeling tired. He would just take the Calm because it would help give him energy throughout the day. And he'd just add it to his water bottle and drink it throughout the day.
That's great. That's just another way that you can try out the Koala Calm and get some benefit from it. So anyway, if you're interested in the product, Koala Calm from Outback Naturals. Okay, now back to our show.
There was one time you were asking, like, we were moving the ship, and I was, I don't know where I was, but they had miscalculated something. And we always had a pilot from the, you had to have a pilot.
A port pilot, right?
Pilot, yeah, on board when you did these kind of maneuvers. It was like just the rules of the way things went. And so it wasn't 100%, whoever, I think it was Starkey was on then, but we bumped the dock really hard and put a pretty good dent in that rubbing straight,
Mm-hmm.
It was like.
Let me ask a couple of questions. Did you guys use fenders like once you docked or when you were docking? Would they hang over the side off the well decks or what?
Yeah. Well, you would drop them from the prom deck and get all the way down.
It was a big rope with a big kind of tire, usually, is my recollection.
Right.
Well, also, hey, I was a fender person. That was my job during docking stations when I first arrived.
Yeah.
And it was a big, like a braided net full of cork.
Oh, right, yeah.
And you lower that down and you put it where the rubbing strake is, because that's stuck out. And so that would protect the boat, and it would be squashed in between the dock and the rubbing strake. And then sometimes later on we got tires, but they usually had the tires attached to the dock.
Yeah, probably.
Truck tires.
I should remember what our fenders were, but I don't. I know we had some that we would lower over, but probably mostly had them. The docks were ready for ships to come and go most of the time.
I'm sorry. Let me ask you a couple other questions since we got the boat up here, right? I see the crow's nest, that big tower. Yeah. Then I see one in the middle of the ship above the bridge, and then I see one in the back. What were each one of those masts for, and what was on them?
Well, the middle one was the radar tower. You could see that up there.
Okay.
In the back one, the front one, they had two big arms coming off of that. It was a derrick. You put one over the dock and one over the hold, and you had one, had a rope that was kind of double connected to both of them. A wire rope. And we would pick something up from the hold with one and then bring it over to the dock and drop it with the other one.
What's a derrick? Is a derrick like a crane?
Well, a crane is more like the crane moves. The derrick you just set up it had two poles, in other words. One to pick up, and then you would drag it across with the other one and drop both of them at the same time over the dock. So in other words, you had two two masts, I would guess you would call them. I forget the terminology, but one would go over the hold and one would go over the dock, and with a rope in a loop kind of between the two, and you had two different winches to drive them. The guy that ran the derrick was kind of a little bit, had to be kind of skilled because he had to pick up one and drag the other one at the same time, kind of thing, to coordinate it. But on the aft well deck, we had a revolving crane that we used to pick up that little boat with on the port side, the sleds. And that was a revolving crane. And there must have been a derrick on the aft well deck too, because there was another hold deck there, but we never used that one at all. The front, the only hold that sorry, go ahead.
No, that one in the back, is that how they would get like LRH's Chris Craft off in the cars?
No,
and things like that.
Well, that was the front one.
That's
right?
forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what you got to realize is that forward mast, between that, the forward mast was between hold 2 and hold 1.
Yeah.
So you had like a crane, like he was saying, that operated down into hold 1 and all the way down to lower hold 1. And then there was one facing aft that would take the Chris Craft on and off, or if we opened up the hold 2, it would go down there. And actually, when Doreen, my sister-in-law, and Arthur Hubbard were down in the lower hold, they were down in hold 1. That was like a playground for the teenagers on the ship at one point. And there was a hammock there, and Arthur pushed Doreen off the hammock, and she fell and was paralyzed, hurt her neck. And so she was actually, that crane in the front was used to take her ashore and put her in an ambulance to take her to hospital.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, after that happened, Hubbard called Arthur up, and I had never seen him light into Arthur like he did for pushing Doreen off and hurting her. I would not have wanted to have been Arthur at that time.
Wow.
We're talking about Arthur, and I'll tell a little lighter story about him because
Arthur is Arthur Hubbard. That's L.Ron Hubbard and Mary Sue Hubbard's youngest son.
Yeah. So when I was first mate, we can go right into this now. It's okay. You told.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not interrupting anything, am I?
No.
Okay. So Arthur worked for me as I was first mate, and he was in charge of that Chris Craft, LRH. Somebody bought him a Chris Craft. It was a cabin cruiser. I think he had just wanted, what I heard is he just wanted a little boat that he could use for a runaround. And somebody bought this huge thing with two big, this is a little technical, Chevy 283 engines in it, or maybe 327s. They were big engines. That's like a big hot rod in them days would have, a big powerful car would have an engine that big. And it had two of them. And it was an inboard, so it was two props, and it had a cabin cruiser. It was a pretty good-sized boat. It was probably about 26 feet or something like that, or 24 feet. But Arthur was in charge of sort of maintaining that, and it was under me as first mate. And Arthur was, Arthur became an artist. He was a really, his head was in that art stuff. So when he was young, he was probably thinking a little differently even than artists tend to think a little differently from, well, me anyway. Art's like not my thing. That's why when I was in the city org, it was like a little bit tough. I was more anyway. So Arthur used to sass me a lot. He'd hassle whoever was around him. You had a story about him. Every time you'd say something, he would just repeat it back to you, kind of thing. He was 12. Yeah. As a 12-year-old. I'll get back to Arthur, but see, me as a 12-year-old, I like to work. I had a paper out when I was 11. Nobody was supervising me. I got up at 4 every morning. I delivered my papers. I collected money. I had to give money to the guy running the whole thing, and working to me was just a natural kind of thing. And I like to do it. But there's two kinds of kids. There's the kids that like to be kids and they like to play around. And you get enough of them in the Sea Org where it's just like, what am I doing here kind of thing. But for me as a kid, I would have liked it, But Arthur was kind of like, he had to be there because his folks were there, right? His dad owned the whole thing, right? Dad was the boss. So he was thinking about other things a lot. He was kind of sassy, and he would sass me a lot. I just working with him. We had battle plans and targets and things we were supposed to do, and so he was hassling me one day. And like I said, we were a pretty physical bunch with all that martial arts we used to do. So I just grabbed him and wrestled him down to the deck, and I was sitting on his back, and he had shoulder length hair, and I just tied his hair in knots. I just, well, you're going to hassle me, I'm going to hassle you. There was nothing I could do to him. I mean, I couldn't do any real ethics stuff to him. I couldn't yell at him. You know, his dad was L.Ron and all that. I figured, well, I'll just hassle him back for it. It was all in fun kind of thing. But I actually, you know, I tied real knots in his hair. And he was kind of proud of that hair. And I'm sure because he ate dinner with L.Ron and Mary Sue and Diana and Suzette every day up in the A-Deck lounge up there. And I'm sure L.Ron got an earful when Arthur went to dinner that night. And I was half expecting some kind of message, but I think what probably happened is, and I'd love to have been a fly on the wall there when Hubbard when Arthur relayed to him about that. It was probably like all Hubbard could do to keep from busting out laughing, and Mary Sue, I'm sure too. You know, everybody knew Arthur was kind of a sassy.
A pain.
Well, I was going to ask, was he pretty much mischievous? I guess that's the right word.
Yeah, you know what?
Practical joker.
Stu, do you remember we had an intercom system on the ship?
Yeah.
You either had the PA system or intercom.
Yeah.
And it had 10 stations. And one of the stations was in the aft lounge. And when the ship would get rocking and rolling at sea and people are feeling a little queasy, Arthur used to get on that intercom and pretend he was throwing up.
And get on all 10 stations at the same time, I imagine. That was the old Ralph O'Rourke story, right?
Yeah.
Ralph.
Let me ask you another question about Arthur. You know, obviously he knew, and the other kids knew, that L.Ron Hubbard was the head of Scientology and this whole thing.
Yeah.
Did he ever use his position as L.Ron Hubbard's son to sort of throw his weight around, or be kind of, you know, think, oh, I can get away with this, I'll do whatever I want? Or was he pretty much put in his place if he did stuff like that?
Jay can probably answer that better, but in my viewpoint, I'll just say that, you know, we were all just crew. Everybody that came on board, even the young people, and some of them complained later and stuff like that. I think all of them came on, like Tanya and them. They were like jazzed to be on the ship at the time. You know, there bad things might have happened or bad memories, but to me, it was just mostly adventures and stuff like that. And there's a lot of goofball stuff like the RPF and stuff, but you know, what about that?
Arthur pretty much did what he wanted, and he was always into kind of doing some sort of a gag or something like that, you know, and sometimes he wouldn't take it serious. Like we're in docking stations, and he was the aft walkie-talkie to the bridge, and he was on the docking bridge just above the poop deck. And I remember Bernie Haas, I think, was the aft in charge for docking stations. So he's on the poop deck directing people for the lines going out to the tugboats and them going to the shore and so forth. And the bridge would be relaying orders to Arthur to relay to Bernie. So you're in a serious situation, but you've got this kid who is just mouthing back. When Bernie would say, "What's the instructions?" Arthur would say back to him, "What's the instructions?" And that can get
like just repeating everything he says.
He was being sassy, and obnoxious.
And you're in the middle of docking. It's like
this is
a life or death serious situation of docking a ship. You don't screw around with something like that. But Arthur just didn't get it, and he didn't care who you were. He still played that game.
Yeah. No, he was good. I mean, Arthur was serious enough, but he had a lot going on in his head, probably as a creative type of person. You know, me, I was just if there was something new, I would just do it, you know.
Janis, let me ask you a question about how did Arthur interact with the messengers? Because you guys were all about the same age, right?
Well, we got along well as messengers, you know, we got along well with Arthur. We played with Arthur. He was maybe 3-4 years younger than me. But we got along well, and I got in trouble over him a couple of times. One time I got assigned a condition of doubt because I came running back from a message and I'd seen Arthur with Vixie, Mary Sue's dog, hanging onto the bottom of his pants, and he's dragging Vixie around, and she's, you know, barking at him and growling at him. And I come back and report back on the message, and he's like, "What's going on with Vixie?" And so I tell the Commodore. that Arthur was teasing Vixie. And then Mary Sue, of course, goes and checks with her steward. And the steward's like, no, Arthur wasn't. She wasn't going to get Arthur in trouble. So she's like, no, Arthur wasn't teasing Vixie. Oh, my God, I got in trouble for that one. Mary Sue got in my face. You are the biggest liar on God's green earth, with her finger just wagging in front of me. It was not pleasant.
It's hard. There was a lot of, I would say, like palace intrigue that went on, there. Like Kim, I had a comment once for something, she had done. And it's like a lot of stuff came up about her, but I think she never liked me after that. And she was always in the LRH's.
Who are you talking about?
Kimma Douglas.
Oh, okay. Was she like
LRH's household unit?
Okay.
And like these weird things would happen later on when I was CEO of like a WHQ and stuff like that. Like all of a sudden I'd get in trouble for something and I'd have to write LRH saying, no, that's not the way it happened. And I often wondered why those kind of things happen, But not everybody likes you anywhere you work, kind of thing. It's a management style. So I tried to get along with everybody. People kind of liked me when I was running things, pretty much. I think.
Now, Stuart, let me ask you a question. What was it like on the ship? Like, okay, you're in your early 20s, I guess it is, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going from port to port in Europe and North Africa, I guess, or whatever, and then later in the Caribbean and all that. What was life like for you? Did you get liberties? Did you enjoy, cruising around? Or what was it like for you?
I got plenty of liberties and stuff. One of the things, like we came out of Madeira, which they called the Pearl of the Atlantic, and we sailed into Safi. That was my next place in Morocco. And the guys because I was new on the crew, I was just a hand up on the forward part of the ship there. And they said, oh yeah, we're coming into the armpit of the Atlantic. So we went from the Pearl of the Atlantic to the armpit, and it was a pretty backward place back in the early 70s back then. If you owned a moped, you were pretty hot. Not on the ships. There's a lot of the ship people had mopeds and stuff, but I'm talking about if you were living in Safi and you owned a moped, you were a pretty hot spit, And it was a pretty old kind of real Arab town at the time. I used to, I don't know, I kind of felt the whole thing, and I was sort of a loner a lot of the times. I would like to go out for a meal when I had my days off, and we got them on a pretty regular basis. I think it was one day every 2 weeks, which was kind of enough. It would have been nice if we had more, but that was okay. There was not a lot of pressure to not go on lives and stats and stuff like that. Some people say, oh, you had to have up stats and all this stuff. I don't really remember that, but I remember plenty of times going to shore. And I bought a jalaba when I was in Morocco and used to go ashore in that. I looked like a local. Do you have a picture of that? I give
what's a jalaba? What's a jalaba?
It's a hooded, sort of a rough cloth.
Like a robe? A robe?
I sent you a copy of that.
I didn't get a picture of that.
Long ago, I sent you one in a big bunch with that other stuff that I sent.
I don't remember it.
But anyway, the locals wore them. The local guys used to wear them. It has a big hood that kind of covers your whole head up, and it was just like a bag with sleeves,
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. That was the local. It was called the jalaba, and our jalaba. And I bought one of those, and I used to wear it when I went down in Morocco, and because we had
with the crowd.
Safi was kind of a backward port, but it was just a port to go to. But we also did Agadir, which was kind of cool. It was a more touristy place, I think, wasn't it? Had the fort.
Yeah, but in defense of Safi, it was a fishing village.
Oh, right.
And so
okay.
Of course, it smelled like fish, and you could smell the fish smell miles out before we even sailed into Safi. Yeah. You could just follow the smell in.
It was one of the smaller ports in Morocco. But also the other thing is, like, as we were pulling in, there was some guy on the dock yelling, hashish, hashish. So that was my introduction to Morocco, And Morocco was big on, the hippie days, because there was the road to Marrakesh. They were singing about how romantic it was going to Morocco and all that stuff, But
and the Rolling Stones hung out there, and the Beatles.
Yeah. Yeah. It was. It wasn't in the Mediterranean. It was on the North
Atlantic. Yeah.
Yeah, it was on the Atlantic side of the Gibraltar, and so it wasn't
Right.
really involved in all that really wacky stuff. And it was still very French. They spoke French there a lot. The French had been running Morocco for many, many years before that.
When you would go ashore, Janis, for you too, would you usually go like with other people so that you would feel safe, or could you actually go into town on your own and not worry about things?
Well, I was a loner pretty much. I for many years I would, and it was sort of like I like to go out for a nice meal, and even with the small pay that we got, you could always. I didn't smoke or do anything like that. I didn't spend my money on it. Everything else was provided. So the meals it was like dirt cheap to buy a nice steak in town, and I was just to go there and I'd get some local thing and octopus and stuff like that. And but you up in Lisbon. The rest of Morocco was not. It was exotic, We had the marketplace in Casa, and it was old fashioned then, where there was a lot of vendors selling like a lot of raw type stuff, fish and other kind of goods, and real Moroccan type stuff, and a lot of Moroccan products. And God, we should play that clip of when we went there and had Belkacem.
Oh, Belkacem
and he was. The whole thing with the Arab culture, and I didn't know this back then, but it's negotiating is just born into their system.
Right.
You never pay the asking price, never. And here's these two millionaires, Janis and Belkacem, and they're arguing over a $5 camel this guy wants to sell them. And they're so serious, got their heads to head and going, well, no, they're all talking in Arab. We should play that clip later. I only got part of it, but
that was going to be my next question, which is you and Janis just last fall went on a cruise back to some of the ports that you went to on the Apollo. What was that like for you? Like, did it bring back memories? How did that happen? How did you feel about that?
It was a lot more modern, but it was interesting because talking to Belkacem, they have converted a lot more toward the Islamic type Sharia type laws more, and so they're more stricter than they were back then. It was a little looser back then. It was more French influence, I think, back then. But now he said it's very modern right now. Everything was modern where we went to. We went to Agadir and Casablanca. That's all we went to. Right? Yeah. But modern towns with a lot of modern amenities and very tourist friendly, but still the marketplace where you go and haggle for stuff.
But didn't you go to Lisbon and Madeira?
Yeah, we did.
But Morocco.
And Las Palmas? No, I just meant, you went to several of these ports.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, the other ports were also much more modern, and they were all, Spain and Portugal have those gazillions of churches, so I like to go to all the churches. And we went out in groups there, Jan and I went to a bunch of trips together, and I took off.
Well, my question really is, did it bring back memories? Because I go places that I used to live when I was 10 years old, and I remember, I used to play over there, and I used to do this over here, and I went to school here. That was my classroom. Things like that.
One of the things that I loved in Portugal was the pastries. They had just, Jan will remember on this last trip, I had almost a sole diet of pastries and some of meals. That's all I would. But we'd go out. I'd order 2 pastries for dinner. But they have these little custard cups. I forget the exact name of them. They're kind of famous in Portugal. But we went.
I just found some in the frozen food section at Trader Joe's. So I've got 8 of them in my freezer.
Well, that's a whole reason for me to go to Trader Joe's. Now, in Palm Coast, near where I'm living, it's a very big Portuguese community, and they have restaurants that have that in them too. They have a big Portuguese club here, and I still, I did so many things in that ship. I don't even remember all the jobs I had. For a while, I worked in the port captain's office with Jerry. That we were best buddies. I was his best man at the wedding.
Jerry Armstrong.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Stuart. Let me flip it on you, Stuart. What was it like living on the ship? Like your berthing and your food, and what was that all like?
Well, at first I got assigned to the aft men's dorm, which was just a dorm. Like for the what do they call that? Steerage. You remember on the
on the Titanic?
Yeah, they had, the cheap seats in the back there.
Yeah.
The overnight people that were going from
Can
one
you
place
point
to
to
the
it?
other.
Is it here? Is it where it says B aft? Is it back there?
Yeah,
It's below that.
below that.
Okay.
The B aft was a dining room, and then below that.
It's 2 decks below that. Because under that B deck aft was the aft lounge, and then under the aft lounge was the men's dorm and the women's dorm.
Right. We had the lounge, which was kind of like we had a dining room, and then there was a lounge, where we just hung out. That's right.
Yeah.
And then below that was a stairway going down to the dorm.
Right, and if you need to go to the bathroom, you got to go up the steps from the dorms up into the lounge where people are hanging out to go back to the bathrooms.
And I think there was 2 showers and 2 toilets back there, if I remember. There wasn't a lot, right? For that.
No, there wasn't. There was 1 shower in the ladies, and I think 4 stalls. And the men's, there's a shower and maybe 3 stalls.
It wasn't a luxury liner. It was an overnight. It was built as an overnight ferry.
Right.
It had a lot of cool history during World War II. Actually, I've been looking that up lately, and it was a landing ship and had quite a few things. And the sister ship, the Royal Eusтерman, the exact same ship, was also heavily involved. They all got commandeered.
Well, back to what I asked. What was it like living on there for you?
Okay.
How was the food? How was your room?
Well, I never did sleep a lot anyway, and so, but we didn't have like bed lights and stuff. But I had a little candle that I used to use as a thing, or we set up a reflector thing for reading at night. But that I quickly got out of that, because as soon as I became like a little more involved in the deck, like at Bosun, in some of the, like when you move up, you get cabins. Like we had the forward was all the deck guys. Up so we had a bosun's cabin, and there was a little like a deck crew with a couple of bunks in it. So I had my own cabin, and then when I was first mate, you move up to the bridge area up there. I had my own cabin up at the bridge, which was kind of cool. So and the engineers had cabins up on the bridge deck also, right behind the bridge kind of thing. And so that was kind of nice. But then when I was in the HCO area, it was kind of lower on the org board kind of thing, and I was just, it would have been in the dorm, but what I did is there was an empty room up front, which was it was like an electrical room up on up above the bosun's area, up on the forward end of the ship there. I forget if we called it. They had a big generator in there, I think, that ran the separate for the winch up there, some kind of big motor. And I just set up a hammock in there, and so I had my own private room up there for quite a while too, which was kind of nice.
How about, let me ask you, the cabins, Janis and Stu, like when you had a cabin up by the bridge, and Janis, you had a cabin, did they have private bathrooms in the cabins?
No, they had
shared in the hallway.
Sink.
Was it a shared?
You had a sink.
Yeah, you had a sink. It was shared showers, and that was one of the stories Jan mentioned when I was coming back from a shower, and I was on B deck, which was where the showers was for the crew, and so put the ship back up, and I'll just show you. I was 2 flights down from where LRH was, so I'm down in that area where pretty much where it says B. Okay, and LRH was on the prom deck, but standing outside of his office in a little foyer there. So you had to come down to A deck, which was one set of stairs, and then down to B deck. And all of a sudden, I hear, "Stuart!" And I went, "Whoa!" And I jumped out of my skin. I'm 2 floors down from him. I hear LRH was calling me. I go, "What the heck? How do you know I was down here?" I come charging up the stairs, and I look up and go, "Yes, sir." And he looks at me.
And what were you wearing?
Well, I think I just had my towel on, yeah. I might have had it over my arm, but it sounds more dramatic that I was wearing it. But anyway, I'm looking at him. I go, "Yes, sir." And he looks at me quizzically for a couple of seconds, and he says, "I said steward, not Stuart." And I go, and we had a sort of laugh about that. And he goes,
"Oh, that would be embarrassing." I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry."
It was just kind of cool. And I said, "Man, I wondered how you knew I was down." He goes, "Yeah, OT, but not that,
Did he laugh or did he laugh?
Oh, we had a good laugh about it. It was cute kind of thing. It was just one of those things that happened. No, LRH was always the man of the moment. Whatever was going on, he knew what to do. When I was at the wedding, and I was best man at Jerry and Terry's wedding, and we have some nice pictures of that we'll probably go over later. But and then Pat and Annie. So it was a double wedding. So LRH was there and attended the whole thing.
Pat and Trudy.
Pat and
Trudy.
Trudy. Sorry. And I was best man for Jerry. So it was a whole double wedding thing with LRH, and everybody was there all dolled up. The messengers just looked gorgeous. Yeah, it's got to show those pictures of you guys all dolled up.
Yeah, we will. Yeah.
I mean, for us being on the ship and being kind of, you know, not having access to all the fashionable things, you guys did pretty good.
Right.
But anyway, so I'm sitting there, you know, and the ceremony's kind of over, and LRH just does a nod to me, and I just got, I'm supposed to stand up and do a toast. And I was completely unprepared for that. I was not very sophisticated, you might say, and I was still pretty young then. So I just stood up and said some nice things about Jerry and Terry and all that, and then sat down. But he always knew what to do, LRH. He could grasp the situation, and you know that. You worked with him for so many years, and so, I mean, anyway, so we're back to talking about LRH situations, huh?
No, that's okay. We're this is a good point to end because we're right at an hour.
Already an hour?
Yeah.
Well, I hope that wasn't too boring, but anyway.
Oh, not at all. I love the funny story at the end with the steward.
For real, man. It was like, and he picked it up too. I said, I wondered how you knew I was down there. And he was, I was OT, but not that, you know. It was just funny, you know. It was a cool little.
That is a funny story. That's one that you definitely would remember, I'm sure.
Well, he didn't yell. He just spoke loudly and with intention. You know how he was. He wanted the steward.
Well, yeah, and you thought he said your name, and so you, of course, you responded. You know,
That's funny. He was an executive that had a lot of things going on, and he had any big executive. I mean, if you read about the whole Ford, that guy that did the big Ford thing and came up with the Cobra, and oh, sorry, we got to quit, but. They have all kind of people catering to him when you're at that high level of being an executive. And Hubbard had his entourage, you know.
I understand.
He knew what to do with people. Okay.
That's great.
It was fun.
Hey, Stuart, thanks very much for being here again. I just wanted to mention to anybody, if you're enjoying this, please subscribe to our channel. Just hit that subscribe button, hit the like button and the notification button. It really helps us out if you would do that. Also, if you have any questions and comments, you can ask in the comments question section, and we will answer them. If you've got any questions about life on the Apollo or things that Stuart's talked about or us, just go ahead and please comment and mention that in there. And then also, if you'd like to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee. There's a link in the description of the video. Just click on that link and follow the instructions, and we appreciate any donations or support. Finally, I wanted to mention, if you would like to become a member of our channel, it's right here, okay? If you want to be a member, just click on the join button. It should be right next to the subscribe button. Click on that. We've got different levels of membership. We really appreciate the members that we've had and that we do have, and we appreciate their support, but we would like more members. So if you're interested in something like that, there's information there. You just click that join button. There's a little video that describes what comes with the different levels of membership, and you can either do it or not. It's your choice, but I just wanted to mention that. Thank you so much, Stuart. Janis and Stuart, have you got anything else you'd like to say?
Well,
I have one.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I don't want to drag it out, but we were going to mention about our little mission here, you know, trying to get the disconnection things handled and how the policy.
Yeah, we'll cover that before. This is a good point to end, though, so we'll just end with that last story.
Yeah,
anyway, Janis,
we'll cover that in the next one. But I just wanted to thank our subscribers and viewers for those that took advantage of my daughter's discount on her CBD salve, Healed by Oracle, because I appreciate the support to her. And if anyone else, the discount is about to expire. So if you're interested in getting any of her CBD salve, which gives a lot of stress and pain relief, you can find it at Healed by Oracle. And Aaron actually asked me, Mom, can you please go and thank everybody and remind them the discount is still on?
That's the website address right there, www.healedbyoracle.com. And go ahead and click on it. And then it was 1 year, I think, 1 year was the discount code. So anyway.
Yes.
See you guys.
All right.
Bye.
Hey, until next time, everybody, thank you so much for being here. And we will see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.